Hi, this is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden, and welcome to Shifting Perspectives. I am just like, yes! I got my first confirmation on something that I've been waiting for, and it finally came through, and I'm just thrilled, so I'm sharing it with you. So my son is 19 years old, and he has had a very difficult life. Just to give you a little bit of a background, he was the scapegoat with my narcissist husband. And from the time my son was 4 years old, my husband began beating him. I'm going to leave it there. The type and kind of abuse is substantial. And I watched over time my son just break under this abuse. And I was too mentally sick myself to stand up to the narcissist or do anything about it. It all came to a head in 2019 when, instead of being sent to my room, that's right, my husband would send me to my room. Instead of sending me to my room, I finally stood up to him. He was barricading himself between me and my son after he had abused my son. And he was certain that every time that occurred, I was not around. This time I was around, and this time I was in his face about it to figure out what just happened. And instead of telling me what happened, instead of anything, he was just barricading between my son and I. Now, this is a stepfather. This is not the biological father. And I blew up and said, I am going to talk to my son. That was the day that he just dropped and said, I'm not his father anymore. And he walked away, which was the best thing he could have done. That's when I started to realize how severely abused my son was. And that is when I began Operation Get the Fuck Out. And I was significantly abused by my father, where my father's fourth perspective, who was all about, oh, you got to get a job, you got to fly the nest, you got to make sure that by the time you're 18 years old, you're stable and you're flown the nest and you're out. That was his goal for us, is you are grown until you're 18 and then you are rejected, which I later came to learn is apparently a white person thing. That is not something that is practiced in other cultures. Just white people think that way. And it was horribly traumatic for me because I did not get the 9 core lessons of authenticity, and I was incapable of functioning by the time I was 20 years old, 18 years old. I was so mentally sick. I couldn't do anything because I lacked the 9 core lessons of authenticity. And when my son's turn came around, my father, again, and everybody else, my brothers, my husband, all were telling me how my son should be in school and be getting a job. They had all these plans for him. Now, my son quit school when he was 16 years old because his abuse was so severe. He could not function. Now, I recognize the signs, and my approach was give him space, let him heal. And everyone screamed at me. The school screamed at me. Everyone came at me. And I said, mental health is more important than education. You can't expect people to function, get jobs, have education if they have mental illness. And at that time, we had found a rope in his bedroom tied. It was that severe. I put him in therapy. And the therapist was wonderful. He was one of the most amazing men I ever met. And he spent a lot of time with me. We exchanged ideas. I remember the day, there was this one day where I finally just dropped my act. And I said, all right, I'm going to talk real to you. I know psych. Let's talk. And I expressed my opinions, ideas. And he went, I'm going to entrust his care over to you. You know the shit better than I. Thank you. Which is pretty much what I got from all of my children's therapists was once they realized my caliber, they went, I'm going to trust their care over to you. So I believe that the best approach to this was giving him space, giving him a safe space. I gave him a healing garden. I just realized the very thing I did to him is the same thing I'm doing for you. So I'm going to explain what I did. I realized before I had figured out the 9 core lessons of authenticity that he needed comfort. He needed a safe place, which is the first ethical lesson we learn as children, is that we can comfort ourselves. My son never learned this. So I gave him a space And I watched him mold into this. He compared himself and his self-worth to the community that he lived in. He compared himself to life in general in the rat race. And he put himself at the very bottom of that line. This is second perspective thinking, by the way. And he said, well, I'm nothing. I have no job. I have no status. Therefore, I am nothing. My role in society defines who I am. And because I have no role in society, I am nobody. And he put himself at the very bottom. And then third perspective, I watched him go into a very aggressive, very violent stage. And that's when I isolated my son. Now, I still was not pushing him into school. That was his choice for him to decide when he was ready. And he was not ready. He needed to learn how to comfort himself. He needed to learn that he was worth more than he is more than just the role society assigns him. And then he needed to learn humility and asking for help. So when I saw his violent stage come on, I pulled my daughter out of the household, moved her in with me because I was living in New York City at the time. I had 2 apartments. So I was working in New York City while he was up there. And when I saw that he turned violent, I pulled my daughter from that place. I also had to get a solid, stable place here. So once I got the solid, stable place and I saw that he was starting to go off, I pulled her out of the environment and I put her with me. So I had her living with me for the rest of the time. And he was in upstate, isolated. Now, at that time period, it was just the way it had to be at that time. And that's what I explained. And he was really looking forward to the alone time. He was alone for a year. Now, my mom popped in on him and made sure everything was okay. I had an automated system set up so that we used, this is really, I love the system I set up. I took Instacart and I had every month I put $200 on an Instacart for him. And that was his money for the month for him to just do grocery shopping. Any other things that he needed, I gave him my credit card so he could place orders on Amazon. So everything was delivered. He was free to do and go wherever he wanted. But I said, look, you need to find yourself. And I literally put him in a walkabout. That is a total state of isolation where it's just find yourself. And after a year, I watched his behavior change. I watched him calm down. I watched him really start to appreciate people. He became he had a lot of growth to learn, and he realized the benefits of people. So this last month, about 2 months ago now, I moved him down to New York City, and he was a completely different person, and he is a completely different person. I watched him come in, and he's not in the fourth perspective. He already got the fourth perspective, nailed it down. He's actually onto the fifth perspective. He's onto the sixth, solid fifth, sixth. I would say he's closer to the sixth perspective at this point. The hippocampus hasn't gone off yet. So yeah, he's a solid 5. Yeah, he's a solid 5 because the hippocampus hasn't turned on yet. But he can feel it, and he values growth. So he, in the last year, decided to go back to school. We set him up. He went in. He graduated. He came out. And then everyone started screaming, oh, he's got to go to college. He's got to go to college. Shut the fuck up, everyone. And I gave Daniel his full space to say, what do you want? And he's like, well, I feel like I'm useless. I'm not contributing. I don't know if I should get a job. I said, what you need to do is sit down and ask yourself what you want. Take your time. There's no rush. There's no pressure. I'm not kicking you out. What do you want to do? And I gave him all the space in the world. Well, last night we were talking, and he was talking about what he wants, what he desires, what he wishes. And I'm like poking at him like, yeah, tell me about what you want. And he finally said, I want to design video games. I said, there you go, do it. So we started going over about plot, his issues with plot, and I'm a writer, so I threw a couple ideas out there to help him, and he loved it. And he was like, can you work with me on this? And I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Yeah, if you want me to work with you, I'll work with you on it. And he's like, well, I'm not good at this, this, and this. And we compared resources. He's like, well, this is what I'm not good at. And that's actually all of my strengths. It's my plot development, it's characterization, it's even music composition. And I went, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I can do that. Or I can hire someone to do that. Yeah, we can do that. And then he's over here and he's going, okay, but I want to do this. I said, you do whatever you want to do, and whatever you don't want to do, we'll delegate. And he's like, all right. So he's all excited. And apparently my son and I are building a video game. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. We're building a video game. And I'm thinking, hey, I just want to do this because I want to be able to check this off on my things I've done in my life list. Yes, I have built a video game. So he is building a video game. This morning I got up and his lights on in his room, and he came out, and it was the first time since he was 4 years old that he was smiling and glowing. And he was like, oh my God, I'm really good at this. I know a lot more. And oh my God. And he just started exploding about everything he found on YouTube, how good he is at it, how much he loves it, how much this career combines everything he loves into one thing. And I was literally getting ready to go live, and I stopped everything. I shut it down and I went, there's the identity. That is it. Because I gave him all of that space to find himself. It didn't take long at all. He's 19 years old. Instead of shoving him into a college and saying, go, get out of my house, he was able to get the space he needed in the comfort of his own home while he found himself. I watched him over the last 3 years put himself back together again through exactly these 9 core lessons of authenticity. I watched each one of his stages as he evolved and went through each one, as he found each ethic, the same ethic that I found, and he pieced them back together. And sure enough, as soon as he got to the 5th one, accountability, it hit, and he turned on like the sun. And suddenly he's like passionate, excited, dreaming, enthused, engaged. And I went, that is your identity. You found who you are. Now it's time to nourish it. That is we have this attitude and expectation of our children that they have to do A, B, C. And the most destructive is this mindset, like if I don't kick them out of the house and put pressure on them, then they will amount to nothing. What that tells your child is you do not believe in them. And they know it. A child has high intuition. A child has massive amounts of instinct. A child can read any and every situation. There is God and there is man. And the difference between God and man, open your mind. The difference between God and man is a man limits himself and a God does not. The difference between a God and a man is a man is so afraid that he puts himself into so many limitations, and a God does not. The difference between God and man is a man lives up here with fear and logic and control. A man does not live here with love, with release. Every time I look at children, every time I psychoanalyze children, every time I step back and just watch them, the younger the child, the closer they are to God. That's why Jesus loved the children, because they were like him. Because they were more open-minded, more curious, more free. They understood that you can do anything. Don't tell me I can't do anything. But man comes along between the ages of anywhere from 2, 3, all the way up to retirement, telling us this is the way it is, this is how it's supposed to be, because they are projecting their need to control onto us. And as a result, we grow up with limitations. I have a podcast that I'm doing here in a moment called, well, let me go back to the title. What if a God believed he was a man? What if a God believed he was a man? Thank you, Daniel. Yep. What if you have somebody who is so set in this concept that they have the ability to think and it exists. We have all of these preconceived ideas of what we think is a God. We have all of these preconceived concepts of what we think a God should and shouldn't be. So that when the sixth perspective comes around, and sixes, every six thinks this, every six thinks this, some deep down level, they think it, they feel it, and then they feel guilt and they go, oh my God, am I going to hell now? Every six feels this. It's that moment in the sixth perspective where you wonder, am I a God? Yes, you are. But what if you have a power like that and you think you're a man? What if a God were to think he were a man? What would that look like? Parents, leave your children the fuck alone. You're fucking them up. Don't put pressure on them. I do parenting classes. It's one of my favorite things to do is parenting classes. Honestly, that's really probably what I'm going to end up doing eventually for the rest of my life is just parenting, because no one talks for the children. No one speaks up for the children. No one speaks up for the millennials. When I talk to a millennial and I tell a millennial, I love you guys, and I really do. I fucking love the millennials. Oh my God, do I love millennials? They are so fucking awesome. And I have seen millennials just beam and go, oh my God, someone likes us? Yeah, shame on you. Shame on everybody who's ever hated on the millennials. Because you have an entire generation now just going around thinking everybody hates us. How fucking dare we? Stop hating on the millennials. That's perspective abuse. You have an entire generation who's now walking around thinking that everybody hates them. The reason why you hate them is because they're not accountable. They're not accountable because they are fifth perspectives, because that's the lesson they have to learn. And guess what? You're a fourth perspective. You haven't learned it either. All you've learned is everyone has to be inside their box and you don't know how to self-govern. Stop hating on people who you can't be, you think. Instead, aspire to be that. You put yourself in another box. You're limiting yourself again. Yeah, I have no tolerance for fourth perspectives. No tolerance for it. Because when I see millennials cry, when I see millennials shrink down and fall apart because everybody hates them, I see the abuse that has been done to them. So yeah, those are my people. They're part of my threads. They're attached to me. To hurt one of my people is to hurt me. To hurt any of us is to hurt ourselves. We're all connected. Process this. I'm done now. I'm really done with this because it pisses me off. So yeah, I'm on a whole lot of millennial love over here. I love millennials. You know, the difference between millennials and everybody else, and I do mean everybody else, is everybody else I have to break down first and then rebuild. I don't have to do that with millennials. Millennials don't have anything that I have to break down. I just need to build. They're more open-minded. They're already on the same wavelength. They're already halfway there. Because they're going into life not judging other people, because they're fifth perspectives. Half of the Gen X's get it. The other half don't. Baby boomers, this is way over their heads. And I'm still trying to figure out, and I will, how to bring Triadic healing to them. But that's not my priority, because that's not my priority. I do not believe baby boomers want to change. I know second perspectives don't want to change. Oh, they wish their lives were better, and they will not do the work to get it better. I don't waste my time with that. You have to value growth to be in the healing garden. And perspectives 1, 2, 3, 4 don't. Now, my son this entire time was actually, I believe he's a sixth, because he's talking about how precious animals are. He is absolutely an ethical six. But he was missing perspectives 1, 2, 3. Now, he learned how to comfort himself. But, oh yeah, he had perspective 1 down, but he was stuck at perspective 2. So his subconscious mind, his entire life, has been stuck at perspective 2. And when you have a child whose perspective is missing an ethical core, I want you to switch this around a little bit. I've been talking about perspectives this whole time, and we're talking about psychology, and we're talking about, you have to be this way. You have to grow this certain way. You have to develop this certain way. Let's look at this from a different perspective. Imagine you have a child who has to learn calculus. Proofs. Let's go right into proofs. They have to learn proofs. And you give that child this proof to learn at the third stage or the second stage perspective, and they don't get it. But your focus isn't having them internalize the lesson. It's having them grow up. So you shove them into the third perspective or the fourth perspective before they've even gotten material from the second perspective. So suddenly they're doing trigonometry and they still don't know what a proof is. And then when you get them to the fourth perspective and you're throwing quantum physics at them, they still don't know what a proof is. And now you're getting angry because they're not operating up to speed. Well, you rushed them along. You didn't allow them to internalize the lessons. So now you've got children and adult children all missing massive gaps in their ethical schooling. That's what this is. This is ethical school. This is life. We all go through ethical school. Some of us get to go through it properly. I have yet to meet one person who's gone through it proper. The other people go through it where they might get one or two of the core lessons down, but then they're immediately rushed into the fourth perspective and then they're held there. And they're going, I had a dream about a school where we're all in classrooms. And these are all grade schools. And the goal was to learn each one of these ethics. But you can't rush a person along to reach these ethics. This is something they've got to learn on their own. The thing is, they don't learn these ethics on their own unless they're left alone. You have to leave them alone, not literally, metaphorically. No pressure, no urgency. No pressure, no urgency. My love of my life has not learned the first, the second, or the third ethic. He has learned the fourth and the fifth and the sixth, but he has not learned the first three ethics. I know what is wrong with my partner now. He's missing the first three ethics, which is why he's struggling. That makes a lot of sense now. Once you understand which ethics are missing from your children, which ethics are missing from your spouse, the game changes. Suddenly you can compare notes and go, oh, you haven't learned these ethics yet. Oh. I was talking to somebody yesterday, a very amazing individual, one of the leaders in manifestation. And he's very open about his journey with addiction and alcoholism. And he explained to me his struggle with it years ago before he found manifestation. And I was able to immediately break it down using triadic healing and say, this is the theory. This is what happened. And triadic healing is just the theory work to mental illness, to everything. It's just the theory work to psychology. So I handed him this is psych theory. This is the explanation. This is the sticky, this is what happened. And he took it all in and he sat there slack-jawed at me, just stunned at how intricate, articulate, precise, clear, simple I explained it. He was astounded and said, yeah, that is exactly it. He says, but I didn't understand it. I just did it, but that's what I did. And he was able to take my work and immediately plug it into his life experience and plug it in, which is the first validation I got that triadic healing works for addicts. I'm very excited about this. And it works for addicts. It works for eating disorders. And it works for self-mutilation. It works for anyone who struggles with needing to feel control. Anxiety sufferers, needing to feel control, avoidance. There's a formula that happens with that. And when you get that formula, and I was talking to him, and he was explaining his life to me about this. And what I saw was a man who had forgotten that he was a god. And then he told me the story of how he found manifestation. And when he did that, his story changed. It became a different person. And I went, you're not a different person. You're a god now. And there's so many emotions that we are fighting against, so many emotions that we have identified as being forbidden emotions or taboo emotions. And what bothers me more than anything is I'm on this end of it, thinking constantly about the second perspectives. Constantly. Am I going to offend them? Yes, I'm going to offend them. And I'm going, oh my God, I have to make sure I don't offend the second perspectives. So I don't talk about religion because I think, oh, I used to be this way. Now I talk about religion. But I held back for a very long time because I did not want to offend the second perspectives. I was more concerned about offending the second perspectives than speaking my own perspective. I stifled my perspective to accommodate the second perspective. But here I am at that time. I was eighth perspective. And I'm trying to accommodate a second perspective. That's like a teacher going, oh, everyone here is 5 years old. I need to make sure that I keep my 40-year-old opinions to myself so I don't offend the 5-year-olds. That's exactly what I was doing. And fortunately, I got to the seventh perspective, and the seventh perspective says, well, the sixth perspective has to learn to self-preserve. And the seventh perspective has to value themselves equal to, basically they have to value their perspective equal to the perspectives of others. Actually, it goes more than. It's which is more important? That's the question that we ask at almost every one of these perspectives. Which is more important? Once you get to the sixth perspective, it becomes the question of which is more important, them or me? And the answer is both. And the answer is we need to make sure that we are supporting ourselves and doing what we need to do without stepping on the toes of other people. And we need to make sure that we keep other people off of us without projecting onto them. That's eighth perspective. So when I got to that, I realized I couldn't suppress my perspective anymore to accommodate the second perspectives. And whenever somebody comes to me who's a second perspective, or a sixth perspective comes to me with material from the second perspective, I spoke to somebody about this the other day, where they came to me and they're like, they were giving me second perspective material. And I explained, I'm going to get right down with you on this one. You are giving me material from the second era, from the second perspective age. Now, Christ was a ninth perspective, and he was giving a lot of information, but he was giving that information to a bunch of fourth perspectives, to a bunch of second perspectives. And the age that he was in when he was giving this ninth perspective material was to a bunch of second perspectives. Second perspectives turn everything into a religion because that's their mindset, because that is what they ethically have to learn. So everything that a second perspective touches turns to religion, turns to faith. They're not wrong. It's just their perspective. But because they're trying to translate from a ninth perspective, the only way two perspectives can communicate with each other is through metaphor. The only way we can communicate with each other is through metaphor, which is exactly what metaphor is. So the Bible was written in metaphor because it was a ninth perspective speaking to a bunch of twos. So they metaphorically wrote this all down. Well, the nines wrote it all down. The 9 had the 8s and the 7s write it all down in metaphor so the seconds could understand it. But the seconds take it literally. The difference between literal and metaphor is this. And I love you grammar. I have like a stack of grammar books over there like this. So I'm going to completely throw all of them out right now and give you this psychological definition of literal and metaphorical. Metaphorical is the language we use when we are not talking within our own perspective. Literal is what we speak when we are inside our own perspective. So when I speak literally, I don't speak literally. The only time I speak literally is when I have somebody in front of me who I am imagining can understand me in the ninth perspective. Then I speak literally. But if I'm thinking about second perspectives, third or fourths, I immediately switch over to metaphor because I know they're not going to understand literally what I'm saying. Literal is the language of your own perspective. Metaphor is the language we universally use to be understood by perspectives that are not ours, which is why adults, when they talk to children, immediately go into, imagine your dolly. You know, it's because we're trying to show them through their perspective what we see. That's perspective talk. It's very effective. The problem is you got a bunch of second perspectives now taking a piece of literature from ninth perspectives and they think it's for them. So they take it literally, but it's not for the second perspective. It's for the ninth perspective. And then the second perspectives translate it. The third perspectives translate it. The fourth perspective translates it. Thank you, John Milton. Actually, that is a very good question. Did John Milton, was he a ninth or was he a fourth interpreting it for himself? Ooh, I have to go back and read John Milton. That's interesting. So I'm sitting here every day and I'm going, what are you getting out of this? What are you getting out of this? What are you getting out of this? You've got the answer. You've got the philosophical answer of who we are, what we are here, why, what's going on, where did we come from? You know that the ultimate truth now is it's all about perspective. You know there are 9 perspectives. You know there are 9 core lessons of authenticity. Why are you here? What answers are you seeking? Why are you still talking? What is your purpose now? That's the question. What is your purpose now? And that's just it. I have a new purpose and I haven't figured it out yet. I can feel it, but I don't know what it is. I know I have to build the garden. Oh, I know I'm building the garden. I am so excited about building the garden, but I don't know my purpose. I don't know now that I've got these answers. I know what I'm going to do with the knowledge. I know exactly how I'm going to organize the knowledge. I've already done it. So I'm just looking at it going, what is my purpose? Probably to celebrate life. Getting back to parenting. Leave your children alone. Your children are not things that you are supposed to be controlling. They have their own agenda. They have their own identities. They have their own autonomy. Your job is to be the boundary person, period. That's all you're supposed to be doing is giving them their boundaries. And imagine your child is the King of England. And you, the parent, are the security service people. Now, the king can talk to whoever he wants. The king can feel, do, dress however he wants. You would think. And the security people are the ones who just make sure no one comes too close. That's the boundary. Oh, no, you can't come that far. And if the king tries to dress up as a peasant and sneak out and join the masses as one of them so he can understand what it feels like. You know, do you ever wonder if the royals talk about that? I would as a kid. I know when I'm 14, 13, I'd be like, I'm going to totally do Prince and the Pauper tonight. Are you in? I would like talk to my siblings about it and be like, we're going to do Prince and the Pauper. You want to do Prince and the Pauper? Let's go do Prince and the Pauper. Let's go mingle with the commoners, and we're going to dress down in rags, and we're going to pretend we're homeless. Let's go do that. I can see this being a thing. I would be that kid. Do you ever wonder if they do that? Because I totally would. Like, really, I can see this. Do you think King Charles ever did it when he was 14, 13 and just said, no, Mom, I'm going to be like everybody else? You did it again, didn't you, Charles? You went out and you played Prince and the Pauper. You can't do that. The social servicemen freaked out and woke me up. It's 3 a.m. and you're not in your bed. I just wanted to be the Prince and the Pauper. Like, I would do this. I wonder if they ever do it. I wonder if they ever joke about it, if they ever sit there and think, I'm going to ask them. I'm going to ask them. Do you ever like fantasize about pulling a Prince and the Pauper? That'd be awesome. That'd be because I would totally do that. But that's it. Like, your job as a parent, your child isn't going to learn boundaries until they're 7 and 8 years old, which means your children are vulnerable because they don't know how. They are not capable yet of setting boundaries. So you have your children, 7, 8 years old, 9, incapable, literally incapable of setting boundaries. Now, mothers have this down to a science. Somebody comes over and they want to touch their baby, and the mother says, no. Wash your hands, put on a mask, then you can touch my baby. And then the fourth perspectives scream and abuse the mothers. And the mother stands her ground and says, no. The mother is acting as the baby's boundary to protect the child. And that's exactly proper parenting. That's it right there. It's when the mother or the father step up and act as the boundary to the child. But it requires perspective that your child is an individual. And it's a very fragile individual. And in most cases, because you are ignorant, I am speaking to the first through the fourths, what ends up happening is they don't know what their job is as a parent. So they instead set on this massive, I'm going to mold and shape this person into a mini me. And that's not parenting. Your job is to be a boundary for that child. That's it. A boundary, not a boundary for you to feel like you can control the child. A boundary so that other people cannot project onto your child and the child cannot project onto other people. You are just supposed to be monitoring their projection. That's it. Just their projection. Are they projecting onto other people? No, leave your child alone. Are they projecting onto another person? No, leave them alone. Is somebody projecting onto your child? Step in. Is someone projecting onto your child? Step in. And then teach the child at 7 and 8, and the child will learn on their own at 7 and 8 how to do it themselves, because you are setting an example. Because from 1 year old to 7 and 8 years old, you are showing the child how it's done. So when the child becomes 7 and 8, the child will just copy what you've been doing. Oh, that's a projection. No, you keep your projection off of me, and I need to make sure I keep my projections off of you. It's that simple. But that is a lesson that we have not learned. So what's wrong with the world today? Parents. Parents is what's wrong with the world today. Parents. Parents are clueless. Parents don't know how to parent. Parents don't have the 9 core lessons of authenticity. Parents have their own agenda. Parents are using their child as prosthetics for their own personality. Take that, write that one down. Parents use children as prosthetics for their own personalities. That's right. If you have a gap in your own ethic and personality, you're going to use people, usually your children, as a prosthetic for your shortcomings. That's what's wrong with the world today. Parents. Parents. They don't need more discipline. Thank you, Third Perspectives, for that opinion. They don't need more structure. Thank you, fourths. You can be quiet now. If you had a clue, you would have it together. And they don't, because they don't know how to self-govern, because they too are lacking. You have mothers sitting there claiming that they know. that they need more God and faith. Thank you, second perspectives, but no thank you. They do not need more faith. You need to learn that you are more than your faith. Your children actually have this one right. You just need to leave them the fuck alone. Stop telling your children what you want them to be. Stop projecting your identity onto your child. Stop projecting your lack of identity onto your child. Stop projecting your insecurity onto your child, because that fucks up children. Bottom line. So instead of you protecting your child from projection, you are projecting onto your child. And it's really fucking up our children. So every child who's walking around broken today, every child who lacks one of these core ethics, every child has the same problem. Their parents projected their own insecurities, traumas, abuse, problems with control, and lack of an identity onto their children, instead of protecting their children from the projection. They became the problem. So that is what's wrong with the world today. Parents. Yeah, I love parenting. Like I am so obsessed with I can definitely do parenting classes for the rest of my life. Parenting is like some of my favorite things to do is sit down and talk to teenagers. I love talking to teenagers. I get teenagers. They'll talk to me and they'll tell me about what their parents are doing. And literally it's all the ways their parents project on them. And I'll listen to it like, yep, I get it. I absolutely get it. And they're like, what can I do? I'm absolutely completely drowning under the projection of how did your parents project on you? Really think back. Think of all the ways your parents projected on you. Because every time they said you had to go to church when you didn't want to, that's a projection. That is a second perspective projection. That's perspective abuse. Every time, oh, my mom does it. Oh, my mom does it. Every time we talk about my children visiting my mother comes back every fucking time with, well, they're going to church. No, mom, you're not getting your grandkids. You're not allowed to abuse my children. You cannot project your religion onto my children. That's a line. She did it to me. It fucked me up. She's allowed to see her children. She's allowed to visit. She's not allowed to force church on them. Now, if my children want to go to church, absolutely, 100%. I purposely educated all of my children on all of the religions. Like we had religions classes where I went, okay, here's all the religions. Here's the atheists and here's the scientists. You can pick whatever one you want. Just be educated about which one you pick. And my children have been free to pick whatever religion they want, because I don't project my bullshit onto them, because that's my bullshit. So think really hard about where your parents projected onto you. It's not just the mean stuff they did. It's not just they gaslit me, or they called me names, or they ignored me, or they neglected me, or they abused me. Think about the things like what ethics, what rules were forced on you, or right down to, did you have to eat all your green vegetables? That's a big one for me. Oh my God. But I was significantly abused by food. My parents used food as warfare for me. So yeah, I have a massive, don't tell me what I put in my mouth. It's still the whole close your eyes and open your mouth. There's only one person I'll play that game with, because it's such I have issues with being forced things in my mouth, like way too much trauma there. So yeah, it's once you start to realize where your parents projected onto you, where other people projected onto you. All abuse is just people projecting onto you because you weren't using a boundary. But the first 7 years of your life, the first 8 years of your life, you had no ability to. Instead, that's when you were bombarded the most by projections. It's literally like an assault, projection assault. And yeah, the only cure is going through these 9 core lessons of authenticity. The only solution is these 9 core lessons of authenticity. And every time I sit down and talk to somebody, whether they be Buddhist, whether they be holistic, whether they be into meditation, every one of them has the same story. They systematically went through these 9 core lessons of authenticity every time. So to do these 9 core lessons of authenticity, all you need to do is look inward and just, nature does it. Nature does it for you. It's automatic. The minute you decide to just go inward, you've started the journey. And you're going to start with comforting yourself, which is why we immediately start with self-care. And once that starts, it'll go on its own. It'll go on its own. But I've written down the maps. I have it all mapped out. So if you want to know what the journey is, it's and I have to clarify, this isn't my journey. This is nature's journey. I just was able to translate it. I was able to notice it in myself, and then I noticed it in other people, and I noticed everybody doing the same journey. So I wrote it all down. So if you want to know what the journey is, it's on my website. It's on my website, and we'll get you in there. It's a lot easier, and you don't have to not know it. You don't need ignorance. That's the other part. Is a lot of people are like, you can't know. No, 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 no. You can know. You can absolutely know. It's not going to spoil. There's no spoilers here. And I say that, refusing to hear any 10th perspective material, because, and I know why. It's because, well, I will be very, very blunt. People do not know how to communicate effectively. And as a result, when somebody tells me what they feel or think, in most cases, they're not being accurate, and they're not realizing that they're not being precise, which I learned last night. I was told that manifestation is all about gratitude. Oh, do I have yummy things to share? I got to shut down this video and restart a new one, because that's a tangent, and that's a big one. Oh my God, did I discover something last night? And I'm just going, yes. So thank you so much. If you love shit like this, subscribe, like, comment below, and donate. Help us grow the garden. That way I can get better equipment. That way I can get this garden off the ground, because shit's coming. So thank you so much. And there is a link tree. Go ahead and take a look at my menu and see all the things I do. Love you, and may the kindest of words always find you.